What's up guys, Drew back again with Princess Craft RV, and today we are going to be walking through the appliances and the accessories on the all-new 2021 Revolve EV2 by Palomino. All right guys, so starting right up front here, we are going to go over the loading and unloading procedure. This unit in particular is going to ride on a 2 5/16 ball, and it will utilize a slide latch coupler to keep you secured to that ball. So we're going to start with our coupler in the unlocked position. So we just go ahead and slide that back. It will remain in that unlocked position till we physically push it forward and lock it down. So from here, of course, we need to get that 2 5/16 ball underneath our coupler. We can either raise or lower the jack as necessary to do so. Once we are centered underneath that coupler and we have lowered that jack so that coupler will seat down on the ball, we need to take our slide latch and slide that forward. We are going to pay special attention that both of our teeth here on either side of that coupler are resting flush here on the frame. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and add a pin here, whether that's going to be just a standard spring pin or if you'd like the locking variant, that's up to you, but that's going to secure that connection, keep that from potentially rattling loose going down the road. We're then going to take our toe chains, we will cross those underneath the coupler. We are going to, of course, pay special attention to make sure that we have enough room to effectively make our turns left to right, but not so much room that these may make contact with the pavement. So riding right next to those chains is going to be your emergency breakaway cable. Now this is a very important piece of safety equipment, and we do want to secure this onto the tow vehicle using a third or separate connection point on the receiver. So whether that's going to be a quick link or a carabiner, whatever you got that is going to make a nice secure connection to the tow vehicle. Reason being is if these other tow components were to become compromised and the two vehicles started to separate, this is going to act like a ripcord to the electric brake system, essentially trying to avoid like a runaway camper scenario or something along those lines. We also have a 7-way plug here. Now this is going to plug into the corresponding receptacle on your bumper. This is going to link your tow vehicle and your camper as one, giving you full function to your tow vehicle's charging system, braking system, marker lights, tail lights, things like that. As with these other tow components, again, make sure we have enough room to make our turns left to right, but not so much that we may make contact with the pavement. Now hopping up here to the operation of your electric tongue jack. First things first, we do have a light that's going to light this space if you are doing any coupling or uncoupling after dark. And then we do have a momentary switch here marked extend or retract. Of course, extend is going to lift the coupler up, retract is going to lower it back down. And then if we take a look here at the back of the unit, we have a rubber plug here. If we were to get our fingernails underneath there and remove that, that's going to expose a 3/4 inch drive nut, which will correspond with your stabilizer jack crank handle. What that's going to allow you to do is at the very least load and unload the unit if you do encounter a power loss situation, or if you have the jack malfunction, something like that, you can at least get out of that bind utilizing that manual drive. All right guys, so just a moment to kind of discuss what is going on throughout this camper on that 12-volt side of things. So as you can see, we do have a brand new interstate D-cycle battery installed here at the tongue of the camper. And also on the inside, we have 4 lithium batteries. Now, it's going to be easiest for you to think of those 2 battery banks as separate components. So what we have out here is going to be maintained separate of what you have on the inside. So with that being said, this battery up front here on the tongue is going to carry a little bit of maintenance. It is a lead acid battery or a flooded battery. So we have a water level that needs to be maintained within this battery. And we are going to remove these vent panels and you will find a clear marked water level, and it is our goal to inspect that every 90 days to make sure that we are maintaining that water level. If you inspect it and it looks like it's dropping below, we are going to refill that up with distilled water. We've talked about how this lead acid battery is going to be maintained and charged while going down the road. A further word about the lithium batteries that we have on the inside. Of course, those are going to be recharged anytime you're plugged into shore power. They're going to be recharged anytime you're parked out in the sun via solar and things like that. Now, if for whatever reason you find yourself in a situation where that may be not enough for you, you can make a connection here on the frame of the unit and allow you to kind of charge those batteries in basically like an emergency situation. So the idea being is that Palomino has included these leads for you, and of course this trailer bound connection that we talked about. The idea being is that if you do find yourself in that situation where you cannot keep up, or those lithium batteries cannot keep up with your consumption, what you can do is, of course, make your connection here. You can go ahead and take these leads and install them onto the charging system of your tow vehicle. And what that will allow you to do is, of course, feed power to the unit, directly charging those lithium batteries. Making our way around the camper, first thing up is going to be our driver's side front storage compartment. Of course, other than being just that, if we look at the very rear of the compartment, we are going to find our battery disconnect switch. Now what that's going to do is go ahead and isolate those 4 lithium batteries that we have on the inside, and it is designed for periods of long-term storage. So with any 12-volt system, especially one as complex as this particular unit, you're going to find nominal or phantom draws throughout that system. Just things like backlights of displays, things that you can't really turn off. So what that means for you is from the day to day, that's really no big deal. It's not going to do any damage to the system, but in storage for many weeks or months, you may find that it is going to start wearing and tearing on the battery. So again, for periods of long-term storage, it's going to be best if we go ahead and isolate those batteries from that 12-volt system, and we will do so by utilizing this switch. So you have 2 positions. Of course, if this battery is sitting completely upside down, that will be in the off position, and then kind of on its side there is going to be on or connected. You also do have a green and a red indicator, of course, to allow you to know at which position the switch is in. One more thing here about the compartment that we see right up front here, and really all the compartments throughout the unit, they're going to go ahead and utilize a magnetic hold open. Makes things nice and easy for you while you're loading and unloading those, so you don't have to either hold this up or deal with those kind of subpar plastic keepers that you may have seen in the past. Now these are also going to go ahead and utilize slam latches. What that means is you can just go ahead and let go, and that's going to close fully for us as well. And then moving on here to talk about the water heater. Now one thing that is worth mentioning, if you hadn't noticed it when we were talking about the unit up front, is this unit carries no propane. So everything on this unit is going to be ran through electricity, whether that's going to be 12 volt or 110 volts, or the inverter, which is going to, of course, utilize both. So what we have here is going to be a 110 volt only water heater. It is 6-gallon capacity. And the manufacturer has a very specific recommendation when it comes to maintaining the unit. So anytime this camper as a whole will be in storage for more than 7 days, it's very important that we store it free of water. So we are going to go ahead and drain the complete freshwater system. To do so, you're going to drain the freshwater holding tank if it's been in use. You're also going to drain the low point drains. Those are going to be the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. Once we've done those 2 things, we're going to come up here to the water heater, and we are going to drain that separate of the rest of the freshwater holding system. So what you're going to do is, number 1, you're going to make sure you've given the water heater ample time to go ahead and cool down so it's at a workable temperature. Generally, I would recommend my customers to wait overnight if they can. What you're going to do then is, if you have water circulating throughout the unit, either using the potable water system or that city water system, we're going to make sure that we cut that off. So if we're using that potable water system, it's as easy as turning that 12-volt water pump off. If we're using our city water connection here, we do just need to physically turn that water off at the service valve. Now, once we've done so, we do need to depressurize the water heater, and we're going to use the hot side of any water fixture to do so. So whether that's going to be an outside shower or your kitchen sink, whatever, we're going to go to that fixture. We're going to open up the hot side. You're going to see a little bit of pressure be relieved, maybe a little bit of water. But once you've opened up that hot side, we're safe to go ahead and continue our draining procedure with the unit. Once we've done so, we're gonna come back out to the face of the unit. We're gonna go ahead and utilize an 1 1/16 socket and extension and remove our drain plug here. Once we've done so, we're gonna see about 5.5 to 6 gallons of water evacuate the appliance from this location. Now, when we return the unit back to service, when we wanna use it again, we're gonna go take it out on a trip. Before we start heating water, we need to prime or pump 6 gallons of water into the water heater, again, before we start trying to heat that. So what you're going to do is you are, of course, first going to replace your drain plug if you haven't already. We're then going to repressurize the unit as a whole. So flip on that 12-volt water pump switch if that's what you're working with. If we're gonna go ahead and use that city water connection, we are going to go ahead and turn that on at the fixture. So with the unit as a whole repressurized, we're again going to go to the hot side of that water fixture that we went to when we drained the unit, and we're gonna turn that on. So what we're going to see at this time is a little different scenario. You are going to, of course, see a lot more water, but you are also going to see a lot more air. That flow coming from that fixture is going to be very spitty and interrupted as it's working that air out through the system. Of course, what you're seeing is the air that has now filled the water heater being displaced and replaced with water. So once that flow normalizes at the fixture, oftentimes it takes about 5 minutes. That is your indicator that you have 6 gallons of water into the water heater and you can start heating it. And of course, we're gonna use again a 110-volt heating element to do so. So far in this presentation, we have talked about this as your drain plug. Now this is going to pull double duty. It is not only going to be your drain plug for the water heater, but it is also an anode rod. Now what an anode rod does is it acts like a magnet for hard water deposits, calcification, things like that. They deposit onto that water heater and eat away or consume that as opposed to the inside of your water heater. Now that is a consumable part. I generally will see my customers get a year or two of service in between anode rod changes. Now when it comes to changing it, of course it's going to start about 3/4 of an inch by 12 inch. And when it needs to be replaced, it's going to be about the size of a pencil and look very decrepit. Now what you're going to do when it looks like that is you're going to go ahead and remove it. You're going to take it to your nearest RV supplier and they're going to go ahead and outfit you with another one that will again give you generally a year or two of service. Right up front here and on all 4 corners of the unit, we are going to find our stabilizer jacks. Now these are for stabilization. They're not for leveling of the unit. If we are leveling from front to back, we're going to use that main tongue jack up front. Leveling from left to right is going to be done with the tires in your choice of a leveling kit. So generally the rule of thumb is within 3 degrees of level, and once we've attained that, we're going to go ahead and run our stabilizer jacks down. Again, they're going to utilize that 3/4 inch drive nut and that stabilizer jack crank handle that you see here on the floor. So if you go ahead and mate them up, we're going to come down, we will make contact with the pavement, maybe give it a 1/4 turn more just to sure it up, and that's it. These are going to stay in better shape longer if you get in the habit of kind of utilizing a light touch, not only when we're extending them, but also when we are retracting them. And then if we move back a little bit further, we are going to find our freshwater holding tank drain, as well as our low point drain. So this is of course going to drain our potable water from the unit. It is a gravity feed system on a valve, and with any valve, if you are against the flow, you're going to be closed, and if we open it up, we can go ahead and see the water drip out of there. And then moving up, we have our low point drains. Those are going to be the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. That's how we are going to drain everything in between water source and fixture. So just to kind of bring things full circle, if we are going to go ahead and store the unit for more than 7 days, we are going to start with the freshwater holding tank. If it's been in use, we're going to open up that valve and let that drain out. We're then going to move over here to these low point drains, open up both of those lines, let those drain out as well. And we're going to go ahead and finish up draining the unit with the water heater, utilizing that procedure that we talked about previously. A little bit past the water heater, we are going to see our water connections. Now this one up top is going to be our potable water fill. So this is how we actually are going to fill that onboard freshwater tank. Once we go ahead and remove that cap, we can see this orifice. So if we want to fill that tank, we're going to go ahead and stick our drinking water hose directly into the hole. We are going to fill it up till we are satisfied. And again, just a reminder that this is not naturally pressurized, so we do need to use that onboard 12-volt water pump to ultimately draw that water up from the freshwater holding tank and pressurize that system and put that water at the fixture and make it usable. Now, city water is directly below that, and city water is pressurized directly from the lines. Now, problem being is that oftentimes for our needs, that city water is over pressurized for what these campers are rated for. It's very important that we do go ahead and utilize a water pressure regulator. This is going to regulate that pressure in between 40 and 50 PSI, which is going to be completely acceptable for this particular unit. So when we go ahead and use our water pressure regulator, and we're going to use this every single time we take the unit out, we need to hook this directly onto the water source or as close to the water source as we can, so directly onto the fixture. We're then going to take our drinking water hose, connect that in line, ultimately making our connection here at the camper by rotating our hose connection at the trailer again. Very, very important again that we always use a water pressure regulator. If this were to get damaged or misplaced during use, let's make sure that we do go ahead and replace this again before pressurizing that freshwater system. Good time to talk about tire pressure and lug nuts for this particular unit. Now, these have a max tire pressure rating of 65 PSI, and with any trailer tire, you run them at the max tire pressure rating. What that does for you is that gives you the highest flexibility in terms of weight rating. So whether this camper is completely empty or completely full, that is again going to give us the most ideal situation running these at the max tire pressure rating. Now also our lug nuts have been torqued down here in the shop to 100 foot-pounds. That is the industry standard. Just about every manufacturer that we deal with recommends going through an initial retorque procedure of those lugs. What that's going to entail for you is going to be the first 50, 100, and 200 miles of the, again, initial travel of the unit. We need to stop, pull over, and check and make sure these lug nuts are, again, maintaining that 100 foot-pounds of torque. To do so, you're going to utilize a torque wrench. That is the only true way to know where these sit. Manufacturers will generally recommend that at the start of each trip, thereon after, that you do check and make sure, again, that they are maintaining that 100 foot-pounds of torque. Time to talk about everybody's favorite thing to do when they are RVing, and that is going to be dumping our waste. So if we take a look here at our valves and bayonet style dump fitting, you of course have a black handle on this side and a gray handle on this side. The black handle is of course going to be for black water, and black water is going to be anything that comes from the toilet, mainly being our body waste and toilet paper and things like that. Our gray water is going to be the relatively cleaner of the two, which is going to be shower water, sink water, things like that. And then in between the two, we have our bayonet style fitting. So this is going to be a universal style fitting. Any sewage hose on the market is going to go ahead and be accommodated here with this style fitting. So when we remove our cap, we can go ahead and see that we have 4 prongs here along the outside. And whether we're talking about our cap here or our sewage hose, you can see that they do have kind of the same connection style. So whichever one we are connecting, I should say, we're going to put in that halfway position. We are going to go ahead and turn until it stops, making sure we are engaging that tightly. That's going to keep any dripping or leaking from happening from this fitting. So once we've went ahead and made our connection, we're going to go ahead and talk about when and how you dump these valves. Now, it's very important specifically for this black water holding tank and system that we keep that in as wet or flowing condition as we can. So to accommodate that, or accomplish that, I should say, we are going to keep this valve in the closed position whether or not we are hooked up to full-time septic. Again, reason being is we want to make sure that we keep that water in the tank from when we flush our toilet, and when we go to dump, that toilet waste and that toilet paper and all of that stuff is going to easily evacuate that black water holding tank. So keep this in the closed position, use the monitor panel on the inside. It is going to let you know when you need to dump. If it's the end of your trip and that tank is not filled up, it's okay to go ahead and dump at that time as well. Also, you want to go ahead and treat these valves kind of like a vacuum lock. You do want to make sure that they are never opened at the same time. That's going to avoid any cross-contamination or backfeeding between the two systems. A very popular option when it comes to going ahead and utilizing these dump valves is going to go ahead and dump your black water first. Once you're satisfied, we close that valve off. We're then going to open up our gray water holding tank and valve, and that's going to rinse not only any shared plumbing, but also your sewage hose on the way out. Now, another important component of this system is going to be our black tank flush that we are going to find here up on the trailer body. And what this is going to do is correspond with a jet inside the black water tank, specifically designed to help blast off any compounded toilet waste, body waste, and it's going to aid in keeping that tank a lot more cleaner than you could generally get with just chemical treatments and things like that. So before we connect to this in any sort of capacity, we are going to open up our black water blade valve. It's very important that we only try and flush out that black water tank with that handle in the open position. We don't want to overflow that tank and cause damage to the camper. So very, very important. Go ahead and open up that black water valve there. You're going to go ahead and use any old garden hose to connect to this. Once you've done so, you can go ahead and rinse that tank again until you are satisfied, as long as that black water valve is in the open position. A little further down the line, we are going to find a porch light. Now, to turn this on and off, there's going to be a switch on the underside. What that's going to be useful for is, of course, if again you are kind of utilizing any of these components after dark, it's going to, of course, aid in lighting up your space. So right next to that, we have a secondary solar connection. As you know, this unit has 4 solar panels. I believe they are close to 100 watts, so 400 watts of solar. Now, what this is going to allow you to do is, if you are camping in a scenario where maybe you can't park the unit in direct sun, maybe you don't want to, or maybe it's just a cloudy day, well, that wouldn't really help in this particular scenario, because what we're going to use this for is going to be supplementary solar. So again, if you're parked in the shade, that's kind of a more realistic scenario. What this will allow you to do is use a portable solar panel, whether that be like a briefcase folding variant or whatever you have. You can go ahead and make this connection here on the camper, take your panel into the direct sunlight, and still take advantage of solar while enjoying the shade. And then moving on here, we have a cable satellite inlet. So if we are staying in the capacity of an RV park that provides a park cable service, this is going to be the inlet of those services. And again, just about every satellite provider out there is offering a satellite package geared towards RVers. This would also be the inlet of that as well. It's going to utilize a standard RG6 cable fitting, and it will go ahead and terminate on the inside of the camper at the designated TV area. And then right below that, we have our 30 amp 110 volt power connection. Now, this is your cord, comes with the unit. Generally, you're going to find it to be about 25 to 30 feet in length. If we take a look here at the connection, it is only going to plug into the camper one way. So we have 2 slotted receptacles and 1 L-shaped. If we go ahead and line everything up perfectly, it's going to plug straight in for us. We know that we have power passing into the unit by this little blue light indicator. Once we've done so, we give this an 1/8 inch turn to the right. It's called a twist lock connection that locks it on. And then we have a secondary collar here that we're going to screw down and secure that connection further. It's very important that we keep a tight connection here, and we don't want this to be, wobbling around. So go ahead and use both of those locking mechanisms to accomplish that. What we have here is going to be our outside shower. Of course, this is going to give you access to both hot and cold water. It's very convenient. It all kind of is self-contained and is going to store in its compartment. Now, this is, of course, designed for, just as the name implies, an outside shower. It's going to be helpful maybe if you're rinsing off pets, critters, things like that, maybe your feet if you went to the beach. This is also going to be an excellent location to use if you are going ahead and depressurizing the freshwater system, i.e. draining the water heater. So instead of having to bounce back and forth from inside to outside, you can do everything right here. And again, this hose and sprayer is going to wrap around the fixture, and everything is going to store self-contained into this compartment. Now also here on the rear of the unit, if we take a look up top just below the roof line, you are going to find a pre-wired camera mount. This is going to go ahead and utilize the Furrion camera system. And what they've done is they've went ahead and taken care of all of the hard work, and they've essentially made installing that camera a plug and play option. So what you would do is you have 4 screws up there. You're going to go ahead and remove the space keeper or the plate that is blocking that off. We're going to install the camera utilizing a 3.5 millimeter connection, and then of course replace those screws, and we're going to be good to go. Now just a word further about that is that camera system itself is going to pull power from the marker lights. So those need to be in the on position to give that camera power, and it will then communicate with the monitor that is going to be in your tow vehicle via a Bluetooth signal. So lights do need to be on to get power, and it's going to give you or provide you with a full-time rear view as long as those lights are in the on position. And then down below here we have a full-size spare. Not much to be said about that, but it is mounted here on the rear bumper. And then if we take a look here on the bumper, at the end of the bumper, we do find storage here throughout. So there's going to be a cap that's going to be placed here. Excellent storage area for your sewage hose or maybe any long storage that cannot be accommodated anywhere else throughout the camper. Making our way around the unit to the passenger side, first thing up is going to be a 110 volt all-weather outlet. What that's going to do for you is allow you to power any devices that you may be utilizing while enjoying this space here. We also have 2 lighted outdoor speakers, as you can see here. Those are going to correspond with the head unit that you'll find on the inside, and again allow you to enjoy some tunes while you're utilizing this space. Moving on here, we are going to find our standard RV style assist rail. Now this is going to lock in the extended position, and if we want to go ahead and fold that against the camper, we do need to go ahead and lift up and then of course transition it into that stowed position. We also have our steps down, and if we go ahead and put them up, first thing to talk about when we are wanting to go ahead and release these or put them down. Now this door, as you can see, is all the way in the open position, and that's what we need to do. If we have this kind of halfway, this bracket here is going to catch on the door and may do damage to the step or the door. So once we have that completely open, we have a little blue release tab here. We're going to pull that towards the front of the camper, and that's going to go ahead and release. Now as I'm bringing these down, I do want to point out that these legs do have some adjustment to them. So that's going to take into account any ground grade that you may encounter out there into the wild. And we are going to set that pitch or that level by pushing this silver piece in and then just manipulating that with our hand to our desired position. So of course we're here in the shop and we are on concrete, so we don't need to do any adjustment, but there you have it. Moving on, if we go ahead and shut this door to make sure we're not missing anything, as you can see, we're not. We're going to finish up here with this front compartment. What you're going to find in this front compartment is, of course, a push button style tap light. We're going to push dead center of that lens to turn that light on and off. And then beside that, you will find a on-off toggle switch. This is going to go ahead and correspond with those blue accent lights that we find at the front of the camper. That, of course, just about covers it here on the exterior